As ever, right on schedule. Welcome to the Q&A. For the structure of the video, we originally had a bunch of different title cards, but as we made the video, it didn't flow properly and it kind of ruined the rhythm of everything, so we're going to repurpose them here and show you a bunch of other cut assets too. Number 1. The old intro. Right, we initially plotted a completely different intro for this video. It started out actually as like a mission brief for a Metal Gear Solid level. We crafted a ton of assets for it as well, and the idea was, alright, Snake is going to be sneaking on board the ship, and he may even help cause the disaster, or was watching it unfold, and we'd use a bunch of stuff from the tanker level from Metal Gear Solid 2, but in the end it just felt way too shoehorned in, so we ditched it. But here's some of that.
As they leave port in Rome, you'll infiltrate the ship.
We use a lot of text-to-speech because it actually saves having to record, re-record, then cut down the audio, recut the audio, put new stuff in, blah, blah, blah. So it's way easier just to do text-to-speech for a lot of this stuff. And then only when things are finalized and we need the timings, we do the real VO. Yeah, so you get the idea. With proper timings, maybe it could have worked, because it gave us an excuse to explain it and keep the high energy there. But then it started to fall apart, and the scope started blooming, where I was trying to turn Cemortan into Olga.
Yes, they are all planted.
You will be on the helicopter out of here now.
And then I realized, okay, this whole thing needs a revamp. So one of the editors was working on the outro scene, which was Titanic themed, and I sort of had a chat with the historian. Went, okay, what do we do? How do we fix this? And then we decided, look, let's just make the whole thing Titanic themed. And then all the rest just fell into place. Engineering failures. This is where things are going to get a little technical, but hopefully you guys like that stuff. So, the ship has these 6 massive diesel generators, and they produce electricity that's distributed all across the ship, right? And they're kept across 2 watertight compartments, and they're consecutive to each other here on the ship. The power goes from these 6 to a main distribution panel, which is then routed all over the ship where it's needed, and then a lot of that electricity is taken to these 2 electric motors, which then produce propulsion for the ship. There are also 3 separate motors at the back, which drive the rudder. Cool, let's play out an emergency scenario. So your generators go down. What should happen is that the emergency power supply kicks on, which is powered by an emergency diesel generator. This thing is way smaller than these 6 big lads, right? It'll give you lighting, it'll give you comms, it'll give you crucial stuff, but you're not driving the ship with this thing. There's not enough power for that. When this emergency diesel generator kicks on, it also goes through an emergency power distribution panel. That's all good, it makes sense. You need this stuff to be on a completely separate circuit. There's also backup to the emergency as well, so if the emergency power supply fails, then there's a secondary system that runs solely on batteries, but that's even more limited, so it gives you some emergency lights and the comms, and not much more than that. There's a couple of other tertiary systems as well, for like the VDR and the radio, but we're not going to get into that. So that's the design, and let's get into what went wrong. When the ship crashed, water quickly flooded into 3 compartments. 2 of those compartments housed the 6 big generators, and then the 3rd housed the main electrical panel. This is a worst case scenario stuff. So, as designed, the emergency distribution panel kicks on, and it disconnected itself from the main panel to prevent damage. However, the damage was so extensive that it caused a circuit break between the emergency diesel generator and the emergency distribution panel. So the system detects this and it goes straight to the secondary backup, right? And it's essentially running off batteries. There's a lot of this scene that we had to cut out, but the engineers essentially are the real heroes of the story. They were constantly turning the emergency diesel generator on and off manually to bypass this circuit break. However, another problem. The emergency diesel generator's fan cooling system is damaged as well. So when it's turned on, it overheats. And without a proper heat exchange, the temperature just goes up and up and up to dangerous levels, goes to 100 degrees, the boiling point of water, and at that point you simply have to turn it off, otherwise the whole thing's going to break entirely or catch fire or worse. Right, so the engineers have to turn it on manually to bypass the circuit break, and they're doing it with a screwdriver while they're being surrounded by water, and they have to do it until the thing overheats, and then as soon as it overheats, they gotta turn it back off, or sometimes it'll turn itself back off. But you can force it to stay on with it by shoving a rag in there and not letting the screw turn back the other way, which is eventually what Pelon did. So I'll show some footage here and see all these white lights. That is all thanks to the engineers downstairs risking life and limb. If they don't have the emergency diesel generators running, then it's just emergency lights. It's like those, those little red lights, and you can't see a whole lot. Now you might think that, okay, if only we can get this EDG working, and if only we could limit the amount of water that's coming in, then surely there are like emergency water pumps on board that they can use to save the ship. But unfortunately not, and this is where you start to get into really bad design. These pumps are massive, and they require at least 3 of the 6 big engines in order to work. So they're effectively ruled out at the point of impact, so it's just not an option. Anyway, the engineers stayed down there as long as they could, turning the EDG on and off, meter deep in water, before finally they had to evacuate. The swing. I want to take a second crack at explaining this one because I think we might have rushed it. So, you're coming in at this angle, and you're actually going to miss the rocks with the bow of the ship. Good news. But because the ship is so long, the side is going to smack right into the ship. Like the back of the ship does not have the same sharp angle of turn, right? So Schettino was right in knowing that the ship should middle the rudder to prevent the swinging of the ship, and he ordered the rudder to middle as well. But then the helmsman, he misunderstood the order or panicked, acted on his own, or, didn't understand Italian very well or English very well, and he just kept going, well, I'll turn away from the rock. Of course, I want to get away from the rock as far as possible. And so that's what caused the side of the ship to collide. And then the rest is as you know it. The media got a ton of stuff wrong. Holy shit. A lot of it was just rampant speculation, especially as the news was unfolding. The worst culprits were, of course, the mainstream press. They've gone through mostly now and scrubbed their old articles of the mistakes, but there's a lot of stuff that you can't edit, especially video.
Now we only have 5 confirmed deaths, and now that 29 missing is now down to 24.
Actually, we have, I think, 11 confirmed
deaths. 11
deaths.
confirmed deaths.
So I'll try to find it. There's a clip where he talks about the boat using its forward thrusters totally wrong.
Apparently with some idea of getting to a port or doing something else. Instead, they move on for some distance and begin to turn.
They made no such turn. It didn't do this at all. It goes all the way over here and then comes back. Number 2, they fell for the Hungarian meme.
A young Hungarian woman who says she was on board, she called her parents saying that she was on board during this disaster.
Didn't happen. Number 3, it was an ecological time bomb, fellas.
Ecological time bomb if they don't get that fuel off.
But it wasn't. This was all hype. There was a very low chance of that. There was no big oil spill. There was no damage to the environment. In fact, the environment was better off after the sinking had happened and they had done all the cleanup. Fish stocks were up, you name it. Everything was better on all metrics. You can see the, can you believe it, the whoa inflection in her voice and the ramping up of the drama. This is all just entertainment, it's not news.
Such a large scale. And look at all these people just on a rope. How scary that must have been trying to get off this ship.
Okay, this is a good one.
Gripping new video just in that shows us what was happening inside the Costa Concordia as water rushed inside the ship.
This footage is not from the disaster at all. It's actually from a swimming pool malfunction on the Carnival Paradise, a different ship altogether, from 3 years prior, in 2009.
Between the events on the nights of 1912 and 2012 are the reason I'm a conservative.
Ad time. Raycon man, you're a good guy. You deserve to find someone who appreciates you. Yeah, the Raycon E25 earbuds. They cost half the price of other premium earbuds. Exactly. You're a great catch. I'm going to set you up with a friend of mine.
So I told him that I could totally fit it, and guess what they said?
What?
Exactly. God, it's so nice to meet a guy who pays attention.
Yeah, the weather really is nice today.
That's a great idea. Let's go for a walk in the park. Ooh, ice cream. What flavor should we get?
Yeah, they come in like 6 different colors.
Good call. We'll get one of every kind.
Oh. Lost you there.
Did you say something?
Oh, thank God. I'm so glad I found you.
Oh my God. Of course I'll marry you, Raycon man.
What?
Do you, Rayconman, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?
Yeah, they have like super long battery life without needing to be recharged.
Oh, I want to spend my long life with you too, Raycon man.
Merry Christmas, kids! Wow, the new Raycon E25 Everyday Earbuds. Thanks, Dad.
Oh my God, thanks, Dad. A puppy.
Woof. I got you something special as well.
Oh my God, my own pair of Raycons. Just what I wanted. How do they look?
What? 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 Ha ha ha. Merry Christmas, everyone. Go to buyraycon.com/incognito for the 15% off the E25 Everyday Earbuds Raycon. And, Costa Crociere. Well, they've cleaned up their act quite a lot. After the disaster, the company was quick to bring in independent auditors. One thing we didn't touch on is that at the time, they had this protocol running that the safety procedures would be done within 24 hours of leaving port. And that sounds fine, but the problem is new passengers are coming on and off all the time, and Civitavecchia, which is the port they just left, is a major one. So most of the passengers were getting on there. And then between Civitavecchia and their next destination is where they had the crash. And because they were due to have the safety briefing in the morning the next day, you had, a few thousand people on board that had absolutely no idea what to do. So it's like, go to muster stations. What's a muster station? It's a bit like doing your safety procedures mid-flight instead of during takeoff. So that policy has since been changed, and now everyone has to do a safety briefing before or while leaving the port. And pretty much every cruise line operates this way now too, which is good. They've also created a live monitoring system so that they can see where every ship is at any given moment. I don't know why there wasn't already like a GPS system that could see down to the inch where everyone was at all times, but hitherto there hadn't been. Chalk it up to maybe 2012 technology or something, but most cruise lines have this now too, but some still don't. Watch out. Along with that, they had some ecological reports commissioned. Despite CNN's blustering about an ecological crisis,
ecological time bombing,
there was also some stuff in the report about injecting money into the local economy, over $1 billion. But, that stuff is kind of indirect and through the cleanup process. It's one of those statements you would call sort of factually correct, but not accurate. But overall, they did a pretty good job with the cleanup, and they showed a real willingness to improve things. Schettino's fate. Where is Schettino now? Well, he's still in jail. He was sentenced to 16 years, starting in 2017, and if some of his house arrest has contributed to time served, then he should be out by the year 2029, or earlier with good behavior. There was a bit of confusion between whether it was 26 years or 16 years. It was 16. The prosecutors asked for 26. We should have been a bit more clear on that. But look, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he was released as early as next year. The Italian justice system seems to me to be very forgiving. That's why you saw the officers only get between 1 and 2 years each, and most likely none of them did any actual jail time. Schettino's previous accidents. This bit I felt a little bit bad about because it comes across as maybe a smidge dishonest. We didn't mean for it to be, but it's not always easy to give the audience the right impression when the pacing has to be so quick. First thing, we showed this picture to people, and I noticed in some reactions, people thought it was real. And came into court too fast and caused another collision.
Holy shit.
But if you're a bit more of an eagle-eyed viewer, you'll notice right there in the center of the screen is text that says that this isn't real, this is from the movie Speed 2. But I guess it just wasn't enough. I can understand how someone would actually overlook it, so whoops. There are no pictures that we could find from the incident, so that's what we used. From the 2010 incident, when Schettino was captaining the Costa Atlantica, not the Concordia, he crashed it into the Ada Blue when in port in Warnemünde, Germany. We jumped on this as a point of information, much like the press did, but it actually turns out that the Ada put out a press release that says something like the ramp was damaged and this is really not a big deal. So, you know, maybe both of those things were hyped a little bit. I mean, they both happened. But I think we probably put too much of an exclamation mark on it. Verita Sommerse. What is this book about? Well, it's Schettino's attempt to exonerate himself from responsibility for what happened. He uses a lot of VDR data and court records to say, basically, look, hey, it's not all me, there's a shared responsibility here on the company and the officers. And there's some truth to that, and I think he should be able to defend himself, so if you're curious and you can read Italian, why not grab a copy? I also wanted to put out there that there's a couple of YouTube videos made by him, but I wasn't entirely sure whether to link people to this because I didn't want people going over there and just putting a bunch of spam and mean comments and stuff in the comment section. That actually happened with Cemortan's Instagram page when we used that as a prop, and you know, we don't really want that sort of stuff to happen, but I do think that he deserves a fair chance to have his say, so I'm going to put a link in the description, and I'd appreciate it if you'd all act in the very cool way that you do. Very cool. Be cool. The officers. What happened to them? Most of them are just keeping low profile and getting on with their lives. We actually managed to find Jacob Rusligbin. I put a bounty out to find him and paid it too. But in the end, we decided not to post his personal information in the video. We had found it quite late in development as well. And when we were doing these action scenes, we didn't know what he looked like. People saying he looked like this is not him. People saying he looked like this is not him. People sending me photos of him all the time. You've all got it wrong. So instead we used a Sims 3 head. And then later on we did find him, and then we decided not to swap out the heads because, you know, this video went out to more than 1 million people, and I just don't want a bunch of righteous actors going over there and fucking up his life. I don't like that. I see it on Twitter and I don't like it. Domnica Cemortan.
Yeah, I got you. I got you on camera.
Yes, I felt a little bit bad about this. She's been through the rung of the media quite a lot over the last few years, but I do have to show you this because I think it's very funny, although it'll probably get the video demonetized. What?
A injecta copiilor tăi droguri.
There's also a misconception that the captain was going too close to shore because he was trying to show off to Cemortan. In fact, that is almost certainly not true, and it's much more likely that he was just trying to be nice to the maitre d'. He was trying to create like a special moment for him. So it was uncovered that the maitre d's sister lives on the island, and she was really excited to see her brother on the ship. And, you know, they were even Facebook posting about it and going, oh, you know, he's going to be here at this time and I'll be able to wave to him and he can see my house and it'll be so cool. And so, yeah, it seems like one of the reasons why they were getting so close is the captain was trying to do a nicety for the maitre d'. Now, this recreation scene, we had to cut a lot from it. It was originally 35 minutes long. It was just way too much. And so once we had the full scope of it, essentially storyboarded the whole thing out on the timeline, we started paring it back. And most of the things that were cut were phone calls between the bridge and the engine room. Here's some examples. Already, this is becoming a big story. Iocarino says to the staff captain, "The situation has become unbearable. There's 1 meter of water. Also, there's water in the elevators." The conversation between Chief Engineer Pilon and Captain. Pilon says, "All flooded, DG 1, 2, 3. They just keep asking the same questions and giving progressively dire updates. The captain calls the lower deck. "Is there water?" But there's no response. Hello? An unconfirmed voice says, "Watertight doors closed." Okay, you see about the blackout. The important thing is that no water is getting in. Many voices. Abandon ship, abandon ship, abandon. Some of the dialogue in these scenes also might seem a bit unpolished. That's because we're trying to use as much direct quote as possible from the characters. Rather than summarizing what they said or putting too much of a comedic tone on it, we figured the more we went into like the comedic route, the less it would keep this sort of intrigue and drama of what they were really saying, you know, what they were really feeling. There was also a ton of repetition. Like the captain is constantly calling the lower decks for updates and just saying the same thing. Hey, is it flooded? Hey, is it getting worse? And then they're just going, no, the engines won't start. Yes, we're struggling with the emergency generator. And so it's a lot of pointless back and forth. We also cut some things that are confusing. So the captain first spoke to the harbour master in Civitavecchia, but he managed to smooth things over with them and he didn't speak to them again. But then it was afterwards that the phone call happened where the woman called her daughter, and then the daughter called the police, and the police called the Livorno harbour master, which then set off this chain of events with the Coast Guard. That felt like way too much in the weeds detail, and it was going to interrupt the flow, so we cut that initial phone call with Civitavecchia. As just a little more detail, there were 25 patrol boats that came in from Livorno, Civitavecchia, Rome, Oblia, Portoferrino, Porto Santo Stefano, Porto E. Coli, and Talamoni, involved with the Italian Federal Police, the State Police, the Carabinieri, the fire brigades, 8 helicopters from the Coast Guard, the Federal Police, even the Italian Navy and Air Force were involved, as well as 14 merchant vessels and 4 port tugboats. Massive operation. And it was all mostly under the competent directive of Falco. Falco's call. We cut this short because the section had gone on a bit too long, but these phone calls where Falco put Schettino on blast are hilarious. Here are the highlights.
Pronto? Sono il comandante Schettino, comandante. Schettino? Sì. Ascolti Schettino, ci sono persone intrappolate a bordo, adesso lei va con la sua chaloupe sotto la prua della nave, lato dritto. Lei è chiaro? Allora, comandante, le dico una cosa. Parli a voce alta. Allora, la nave adesso, io sono qua di fronte... Comandante, parli a voce più alta, metta la mano davanti al microfono e parla a voce alta. Comandante, allora, in questo momento la nave è inclinata. Ho capito. C'è gente, ascolti, c'è gente che sta scendendo dalla biscaggina di prua. Lei quella biscaggina la percorre in senso inverso, sale sulla nave e mi dice quante persone e che cosa hanno a bordo, chiaro? Guardi Schettino che lei si è salvato forse dal mare, ma io la porto veramente molto male, faccio passare l'anima dei guai. Vado a bordo, cazzo! Comandante, per cortesia. No, per cortesia, lei adesso prende e va a bordo. Mi assicuri che sta andando a bordo. Io sto andando qua con la lancia dei soccorsi, sono sotto qua, non sono andato da nessuna parte, sono qua. Che sta facendo, comandante? Sto qua per coordinare i soccorsi. Che sta coordinando lì? Vado a bordo, mi coordini i soccorsi da bordo. Lei si rifiuta? No, non mi sto rifiutando. Lei si sta rifiutando di andare a bordo, comandante? No, sto andando. E mi dica qual è il motivo per cui non ci va. Sto andando perché ci sta l'altra lancia che si è fermata. Lei vada a bordo, è un ordine. Lei non deve fare altre valutazioni. Lei ha dichiarato l'abbandono nave. Adesso comando io. Lei vada a bordo. È chiaro? Comandante. Non mi sente? Sto andando a bordo. Vada. Okay. Ci sono già dei cadaveri, Schettino. Avanti. Quanti cadaveri ci sono? Non lo so, uno l'ho sentito, me lo devi dire lei quanti ce ne sono, Cristo! Però ma ti rende conto che è buio e che qua non vediamo nulla? E che vuole tornare a casa, Schettino? È buio, vuole tornare a casa? Salga sulla prua della nave tramite la biscacina e mi dica cosa si può fare, quante persone ci sono e che bisogno hanno. Ora!
Based on the records from the Coast Guard, Schettino hid from authorities for most of the night. Early on, when the Coast Guard first arrived with a boat, they searched around for the captain and he was already gone. He had abandoned ship while there were still hundreds of people on board. So they report to command that the captain might be on shore, so they head there. They can't find him there, so they head back to the ship. Falco then tells the Coast Guard to find him and drag his ass back on board. Someone from the Coast Guard then spots Schettino on the rocks near Point Gabbianara, and they inform the police, some of whom are down at the beach. So the police chief makes his way over there. He finds Schettino and tries to reason with him. Hey, come on, you gotta go back, you gotta get on a boat, you gotta go to the Coast Guard. Schettino refuses. Instead, he spends the next half hour or so just watching the rescue operation. It's pretty pathetic. The police captain gives up eventually, and then he returns to port. There is some speculation that the reason Schettino did this was because he was considering throwing himself off the rocks. At least that's what one of his officers said. It's hard to know if that's true. Probably is. It'd be understandable at that point. But from there, the police tell the Coast Guard what's happened. Falco then calls Schettino's mobile and orders him back on board. Schettino claims that I'm going back on the Costa right now. But Falco knows that's not true, because he knows where he is. He knows he's on the rocks over there. So Falco tells Schettino that a Coast Guard boat is on its way to his location and you'd better be bloody well on board it. And then it arrives, Schettino refuses to board it, and they give up. Then some more time passes, and then they send another boat, and eventually he agrees to go. They take him to the shore, and he's interviewed by police, and you know the rest. So let's talk about Falco's demotion. It's hard to know exactly what was going on between Falco and Delana. A lot of it seems to be this overshadowing thing. But there's one more factor that might have been the missing puzzle. I'm not saying this for sure, but it was a thing that was heavily speculated about. Not long before he was demoted, Falco had expressed public support for the victims of the Moby Prince disaster. Now, the Moby Prince was an Italian ferry which used to operate in Livorno until April 10th, 1991, when the ferry was involved in an accident and 140 people died. It's widely regarded that the incompetence of the Italian Coast Guard at the time led to this high death toll, as well as a corrupt judicial system which essentially absolved these government officers and their mishandling of the situation, and they were able to cover up for the disaster. So after Falco expressed public support for uncovering the truth of what happened, he received his order to be transferred to admin. Very interesting. A lot of people considered that to be far too coincidental and that it was punishment. There was a fair amount of public outcry after this happened, and there were even politicians demanding an explanation as to why something of a national hero had been snubbed. Once he said, "See you later," to the Coast Guard, he joined the Five Star Movement, an Italian political party, and was elected in March 2018, and by December that same year he was expelled from the party. I don't know a whole lot about it. He claims that he was expelled because he didn't vote in line with what the other party members wanted, and so today he serves as an independent. Devil's advocate. I want to put a little bit of balance in here. So, we've made some pretty heavy indictments on the captain and his character. I think it's cowardly, pathetic, but there's a little on the other side of the argument that also should be addressed. He was not the only one responsible for this crash. His staff were complacent and not following procedure. His helmsman went in the wrong direction multiple times. The ship had engineering failures like leaking watertight doors. The ship itself was doomed from the moment it hit the rocks. There was nothing he could have actually done to save it. However, the court kind of hand-waved a lot of this stuff, and to me it seems like they were going for a little bit of a PR trial. So for example, admitted into the witness testimony, Ciro Ambrosio claimed that Schettino never took the con, which means tells everyone that he's in charge. But That's not true at all. You can clearly hear it on the VDR. Schettino says it. He does, in fact, take the con. So we're not sure why he said that. We're not sure why it's there in the court record. But it sort of adds to this case of making the captain look worse. Ferrarini also told the court that he was very mad when he heard that the captain had lied to the harbour master and the Coast Guard, lying that it was only a blackout. But Ferrarini was doing practically exactly the same thing. He was keeping it quiet from the Coast Guard and hoping that they could fix the problem amongst themselves. Jacob Russley-Benn, who was a critical witness for Schettino's defense, just up and left the country. He was, after all, steering the ship at the time. I'd expect for his punishment to be 16 years in prison as well. But, you know, the court also focused quite a lot on the affair with Cemortan, even though it had basically nothing to do with the tragedy. It was fairly incidental. To be fair, we did that too. We thought it was funny. But they turned it into a media circus, and the claims about her distracting the captain, as far as we can tell, are just untrue. Thank you for the note, by the way. One of the editors here says, it's not like he had her bent over the steering wheel at the time. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, couldn't have put it better myself. Schettino's lawyers eventually talked about taking his case to the European Court of Human Rights. They said that basically they'd already decided his guilt and didn't give him a fair trial, also citing that no one who was judging him had nautical experience or had worked on a large ship before. You know, make of that what you will. But you know, they did also give all of the officers plea deals and essentially only put Schettino on trial, practically guaranteeing a conviction. Yeah, so anyway, I just want to balance out the argument there. Should he be in jail? Yes. But all these things too. I'll point out one more thing as well that might get a little bit into the weeds. Italy absolutely did not want cruising to stop. Costa Corporate got off with a little more than a slap on the wrist. It was a $1 million fine, and by the way, you better clean up your mess, was basically the extent of it. And okay, that bill added up to well over $1 billion once that was done, but there was no criminal punishment. And I think the reason that happened is because cruising matters a lot to the local economies. They were keen to see it running at full capacity once again, as soon as possible. So, with that in mind, perhaps some of the people over at HQ who should have been prosecuted were spared so that business could keep on chugging. But on the other side, you know, if you prosecute them, then you're actually punishing these local businesses and it starts getting complicated. It's better all handled through civil trials, and they did handle it through civil trials, so that makes sense. Also, I have to point out this clip, which is a straight up, what the heck are you talking about? Because, well, look for yourself.
Ng mga 10:30, dumating po siya ng araw na yun, meron kasama po siyang babae na hindi ko kilala. Yung time po nun, naramdaman po namin na nagbagsakan na ho lahat ng mga niluluto namin sa cook. Nung si komandante, kinignan ho sabi namin.
The captain was non-stop on the phone the whole time. This is all clear on the VDR. The lights were out. He didn't go back to dining. This is just categorically untrue. But, you know, the media will let anything go out. Island troubles. The Concordia had sunk right off the shores of Giglio, and it was very close to their port as well. And this effectively closed things for a while, and once it was reopened, it was only reopened to a reduced capacity. And for the fishermen who worked there, it's not just a matter of, oh, you avoid it and you'll be fine. There's a ton of security, there's cleanup crews roaming around, there's all sorts of things that just mean that you can't come and go as you please anymore. And of course the locals weren't too happy about it. There was this big fuck-off cruise ship ruining their slice of paradise. It had also become a hub for tourists to visit and gawk at the ship. Well, to be fair, if I was in the area, I'd be sailing out there too to gawk at it. The island was filled with news reporters who would come to take photos and ask dumb questions in English. Buongiorno, buongiorno, el familiare avec Schettino, you know. And also an endless stream of cleanup crews who were living on the island in temporary accommodation. And overall, it had most of them bothered. But for a contingency of people on the island, there was some good news too. A lot of the hotels and bars and restaurants typically closed for half the year when they couldn't get enough customers. It might be winter time, something like that, and people wouldn't come and visit in high enough volume for them to keep their establishment open. But for that period, while the cleanup crews were there, they were able to keep things open all year round. Ronai and Ronai. A very successful law firm based in New York, also operating in Hungary. Mr. Ronai speaks Hungarian fluently, hence why he takes on a lot of these cases, and he was able to suss out that it was a scam well before the media did. Ronai also has a track record for successfully suing cruise lines. It seems to be a bit of a specialty of theirs. In this segment, I had quite a few people comment that I was wrong about Hungary having no laws for insurance fraud, and maybe you're right, but that's a direct quote from Mr. Ronai, who specializes in this area of law. So I just took his word for it. Also, this is in 2012. Maybe it's not true of today. And that wouldn't stop them from being prosecuted for other crimes, regular fraud, lying to authorities, for instance. But they weren't. And the point is that the couple got away with it. Mario Pellegrini, the deputy mayor. We just wanted to include this bit because we thought it was a good example of what someone in a leadership position should do. Instead of running away and hiding like the captain did, this guy immediately jumped on one of the boats returning to the Costa, and he went round helping passengers. We thought it was a very nice contrast. Martin the Magician. Maybe we didn't do the best job explaining here, so let me do a quick recap. Essentially, you've got this magician, and he's doing a cut woman in half trick, and just as the assistant is about to step into the front half of the box, the ship crashes. And everything gets put on pause. Then there's also a dancer, right? Rosalind Rinkin, and she's already in the box, because once they cut this lady in half, right, she's going to stick out her legs, right? So, as part of the act. So Rosalind can feel the jolt, and then she can hear the audience murmuring, and she's like, whoa, let me out. Then the lights go out, and you start hearing more like, whoa, what's going on? And then at this point, it's pitch black, right? And Martin flicks the latch to let Rosalind out so that she can get out. And then he just bolts off the stage. He just takes off running. And then the lights come back on, and it's this bizarre ta-da, because they've ruined the cut woman in half trick. And you can just hear his footsteps running away across the wooden stage in the distance. And everyone's going, wait a minute, what the fuck? This guy, he's just leaving? What the heck? And people start to panic a bit. And then Rosalind, the assistant, kind of go, oh, maybe we should start directing the audience out of here. And then later on, when the ship starts to tilt, the whole box just falls right into the audience. And then by that point, everyone's just panicking. Okay, get the fuck out. Got to get back to our cabins. We've got to get to Muster Station. We've got to get out of here. But I think it's very funny that Martin just ran away. He's a fairly famous magician. He's been on telly a few times. You can see his stuff on YouTube. The pasta dish. What did we do with it afterwards? We threw it away. It's like $1 worth of pasta and $1.50 jar of sauce. I offered it to the editors, but amazingly, they didn't want it after I put my grubby hands in it and threw it into a dirty sink. Ungrateful, that's what I say. There they are. The deets. Also, gotta mention, this guy reviewed our video. He's a nautical expert waterman, and he said that we were very accurate. Thank you very much.
By the way, I just want to say that this is an excellent recollection of the whole event.
What's up with Taika Waititi stealing my fucking ideas for videos? What the fuck? No one was talking about Steve Bonnet till I was. I wager someone saw that, and then they just went, yeah, we'll have it. Thanks. I swear to God, if there's a montage scene in there where he learns to become a pirate, I'm gonna be furious. I think that's everything. Oh, why it takes so long to do these videos, and why it took so long to get this Q&A done. There's a Q&A coming out next week on incognito mode. Right, well, basically what happened was after we missed that first deadline of a week, everything just got put on the back burner. I was like, all right, well, we didn't make it. There's actually other projects that need focus on, so we just started back on in the field, and we started working on more main channel stuff. Also, you know, this was expected to be a, hey, we'll do this off the cuff. It'll take 20 minutes, and then it's like of course, a 40-minute produced fucking edited video in there. We had to find a lot of old assets as well. The main channel videos, I feel like maybe we just never explain why it takes so long to do these things. Here, you know what? I'm going to do a little breakdown of what each scene requires to show a little bit of our timeline. we've got all these different layers. So it's like asset on asset on asset on asset. Anything that's green is actually another layer of assets, and most things have green on them. So if I go into this, it's just more assets. So it's even more than it first looks. But let's go to something simple, which is like the opening scene. So in this opening shot, it sort of consists of 3 layers. There is a video underneath, and that's playing of the ocean. And then on top of that, we've photoshopped out a railing. So we would have to take this from somewhere and then essentially cut everything out so that it's a transparent PNG, and then you can still see the background behind it. And then you've got Harold, and so he looks like this, and then we've essentially just put a head on a body that we've also cut out. So that's 3 layers, and then we'll have that playing, and then on top of that we will have a nested sequence, and then the nested sequence will have a bunch of effects in it. So for example, the opacity's increasing there, and there is a position and a zoom on that as well. So this sort of stuff might take 15-20 minutes to put together, something like that, with all the cutting out and all that sort of stuff. And then that becomes, how long? 2 seconds to 9 seconds. And this is quite a long shot. Most of these shots aren't this long. So that becomes, and then there's script and VO on top of that. And this is like the 80th version of the script. And then music goes underneath that. So you can see how it all sort of adds up to take quite a long time. Then that gets taken over by 2 cross dissolves, and then one of those is a nest, and then it's him there. I'm not sure why that's so many layers. Oh, it's his eye. Okay, so we've got to make the eyes move. Each of these eyes has to kind of move independently. And then he stays completely stationary, but then he's put into a nest, and then that nest is zooming. It gives it this feeling of being a little more lifelike. Then we've got the background of the ship, and so we've just added a separate position and zoom, and then we've added a blurring effect to give a sense of depth. Then that does a dip to white, and then that comes in with some regular footage. That fades into more footage overlaid, and then in comes Harold again. So the opacity increases, there's a zoom function, and then this is a combination of a few different assets. So we've got just the head, and then we've got this second face here, and then it just fades one into the other. And then you take this nest, and then sound effect is added underneath. So yeah, it's quite simple stuff. There's just a lot of it. But once you start getting over here to these sort of action scenes, you can see that it becomes quite a lot. Let's take it from 5 minutes 30, so 11 shots over the course of 30 seconds. So that means there's a shot on average about once every 3 seconds. And then you sort of scale that out to a 40-odd minute video. Let's say our average shot probably isn't about 3 seconds. It might be something close to about 4 seconds. That's 15 per minute. So that's 570 individual shots. And then within each shot, you might have 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, 10. So that's 14, and then 15, 6, these are sound effects, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So you might have 20 assets. I'm not sure if that's particularly typical. So you might be talking about roughly 11,000 assets over the course of the video. I think if I look at the video files themselves, there'll be a lot of redundancy in here as well. Okay, it just keeps going. Look at it go. Fuck, about a quarter of a terabyte. So there's 50,000 files in here, and you can just really click anywhere and, go bin 1, whatever, and it's all just like collected, cut out assets. Like every one of these has been like Photoshop, and there's just like thousands of them. And so that's why things take so long, just because, we're not filming anything. We're just constructing everything pretty much from scratch. We're just, we're just sort of taking existing assets and we're altering them. And so that's what's going on. It's not like, oh, it's July, maybe we should put out a video. Before we have even put out Costa Concordia, we were already working on the next video. We don't want the quality to go down. It sucks that they're not out more often. If I could be pulling out one a week, I would. I don't want the quality to go down either. Like, I look at the newest videos and I think, and not just me, but like as a team, we're quite proud of them. We could start going back to doing 5-minute videos, but honestly, I just don't think they're as interesting because you can't go as in-depth. So the structure will go very much like, so some people did a thing and then it went badly, the end. By the way, that video that we put out is actually not rendered at all. We couldn't make it render. We tried everything. We tried pulling all the files into a new project, tried on different computers, tried it on the server, tried it off the server, different formats, different codecs. We were troubleshooting, going piece by piece, finding anything that had an error code in it. Okay, yeah, this PNG will replace that, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And in the end, it was so impossible. What we had to resort to was, we took this preview render screen here, right? And then we just blew it up full screen. Then we opened up OBS, and we just started screen recording the whole thing. So we would screen record the preview, and then we just kept going until there was a dip in the frame rate, and then we stopped the recording, and then we started it again, and then re-recorded the next few minutes. We basically did that over and over and over the whole way through the timeline, and then we took those recordings, strung them all together like this, and then cut off the overlap. And that's the video. We still don't have a proper rendered version. Secret channel and channel update stuff. I've read a few comments, and I think people think that we just sort of sit on our hands and then maybe a month before the video we start working. Or, you know, we've got all these videos on side channels coming out. It's like, why is he working on this and not on the main channel? And it's totally a fair question. I'd want to know. And the answer to that is, well, we're always working on a new main channel video. There's never really a period when we're not working on one. And then the side channels have been made in such a way that all I really need to do is a recording for them and then do more of a producer role. So I'll come in and I'll critique the thing and I'll go, that's not funny. That sucks. And maybe here's a reference that should go here, and no, that should look more like that, and help with some of the timings. And sometimes I'll come in at the last minute and do the final polishes on the edit. But that's about the extent of stuff I do for other channels. My main job is the main channel. And look, even if we shut all these other ones down tomorrow and said, okay guys, we're all working on the main channel, videos wouldn't come out on it any faster or more frequently. So basically, you get the main channel when it's done. Second channel, about 1 a month. So, you know, we should have on average, I'd say about 10 a year of those. There's 3 other channels. There's a live channel, which I haven't been paying any attention to for a while. There's story mode, which is just basically video games run through. It's found flicks of games, and I just do the VO for that. I come in, I haven't read the scripts in advance, and so it doesn't take pretty much any of my time. We just sit there for 30 minutes recording and basically interrupting each other, me and another editor usually doing the VO. That's great fun, and I don't do any of the editing for that. And then there's this other channel, which is just for a completely different audience altogether. Yes, this is probably not your thing. It's not entertainment, it's not funny, it's just like a reference index. And so Historian runs that channel, and she just goes, here's a thing, and here's what it is. That's it. That's the whole idea. And it's basically supposed to be an analog of Wikipedia. So instead of going and reading an article on Wikipedia, you just go, type it into the YouTube search bar. Or this channel, which is like how to pronounce banana in English. It's like, here you go, banana.
Banana.
If they find it and they go, this is fucking not for me, and they don't subscribe, that's totally fine. A lot of this content is catered to a pretty different audience. Other than that, for now, I don't have any other channels, but I'll let you know as they come up. Eventually, we will have dozens of channels, and then I will franchise them out, and it'll be like a McDonald's in every state. And then we'll own a ton of them in secret, and be like, oh fuck, is this one owned by IH? Is this one owned by H? And then we will rule YouTube. And then we will take all of those winnings, and we will put them into CeeLo coin, and then we will buy a private island with the winnings. And then I will drive a boat into